Welcome to this brand new episode of the Pitch Side Podcast. I'm your host, HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from all the episodes on the podcast and the other content on the channel. Follow us on social media, the links in the description and the usernames on the screen. And listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform of your choosing. As always, join us for more, and you're always welcome on the episode. We start things off with the Premier League round 24 taking place and starting with 3 games on Tuesday. Newcastle United finally achieved another victory in the Premier League. This is only their 3rd win in the season against Everton, newly of course managed by Frank Lampard after a first game in the FA Cup where it was pretty successful for Frank Lampard, beating Brentford 4-1. It wasn't the same success away to St James Park, although they took the lead early thanks to an own goal actually from Jamal Lascelles, giving Everton the lead inside 36 minutes. Newcastle responded immediately, also to an own goal from Mason Holgate, and then of course Newcastle scored twice in the second half thanks to Ryan Fraser and Kieran Trippier, who was the man of the match in my opinion. Kieran Trippier was the best man on the field, a really difference maker for Newcastle in that game. 3-1 it ended for Newcastle, although Newcastle didn't have much of possession, but I think were the more dangerous side whenever they had the ball. The lineup of course featured all of their new signees as far as Newcastle are concerned. Matt Targett was there, Kieran Trippier started, Chris Wood started of course. On the bench there was the newest other signings, Bruno Guimaraes, who came on late in the game, and Dan Burn as well, who featured on the bench. It was a great game, great victory I think as far as Newcastle are concerned, and definitely one that will maybe help them on the way to surviving in the Premier League. Actually they're out of the relegation zone and they're right behind Everton, who are dangerously close to that place, with only 3 points separating them from the first side in that zone, Norwich City with 16. Moving from the relegation zone to up the table really, with West Ham finally regaining that 4th position on the table, defeating Watford 1-0. It was an important victory and a much needed victory, although it came in a bit of a hard way. Only after 68 minutes they could have broken the deadlock. West Ham dominated, had more possession, but didn't exactly show for it. But Jared Bowen, when you have Jared Bowen, you have someone in his quality, he can bring you results in games like these. He scored the goal in the 68 minutes to give West Ham back their 4th spot on the table, and put them on the right track really after the loss against Man United last time out. Then you have the FA Cup, obviously the win against Kidderminster at the weekend, and then of course this win against Watford surely would direct them in the right way after 2 losses back to back in the Premier League for West Ham. Aside that loses the top 4 spot as a result of that is of course Manchester United, who again are really horrendous. The loss against Middlesbrough, of course, in the last Friday, is not exactly special. It can happen to any side, regardless of their situation and regardless of their position on the table. But this draw against Burnley here is one that really just puts a lot of question marks about Manchester United at the moment. It just adds more question marks to an already questionable season as far as Man United are concerned. The starting lineup already was weird enough because Cristiano Ronaldo was benched, for no apparent reason really. He was fine, but he was decided to be benched by Ralf Rangnick. I mean, if that is a show of personality, I think it was a stupid one. He started, of course, with the usual lineup up front: Rashford, Sancho, Bruno Fernandes, Edison Cavani, of course, Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, Rafael Varane, Diogo Dalot. In the midfield, there was a change, though. No Fred. It was Scott McTominay and Paul Pogba. Fred, was out of the list completely. Man United, I thought this game was not great for them, not just because they draw, but I think particularly in the second half they felt so lackluster compared to Burnley, who were more dangerous in that second half. It was kind of the way it was kind of invert way. Like Burnley did nothing in the first half. United had a terrific first half. They scored a goal thanks to Lindelof, and it was disallowed. And then Varane scored a goal that was disallowed. Then Paul Pogba scored a goal that was eventually allowed in the 80th minute. Man United had a terrific first half, as I mentioned. They didn't allow spaces for Burnley to play long balls towards their defence. They dominated the ball. They had loads of chances. They were creating. Jadon Sancho was running. Marcus Rashford was doing great work. Paul Pogba was playing probably the best game of his season so far in the first half. But then in the second half, something just happened, and Man United, became lackluster in pressure. Burnley was starting to get more balls up front. They started to move the ball around, found spaces. Dwight McNeil in particular was brilliant, as well as Maxwell Cornet on both sides of the pitch. Maxwell Cornet, who went down injured, unfortunately, for them in the second half, and they found spaces, and as early as 2 minutes in the second half, they scored the equaliser thanks to Jay Rodriguez, and Man United couldn't have had a worse start to the first half if they wanted to, or the second half if they wanted to, and the game basically, lagged on or sort of rumbled on from that point, because United didn't do anything significant in that second half. No shots on target whatsoever. They tried, but no shots on target. The closest they came, I think, was Varane trying with his back heel flick, and the defence taking care of it. It's a bad game. Another really horrific performance from Manchester United overall. Another defensive calamity. Harry Maguire should have been sent off, frankly, in this game. That's how bad things were. And Man United lose 2 points and lose the 4th spot. And results like these are really going to be the ones that see the demise of Man United in the top 4 race, if it happens, of course. It is a big result for Burnley. It is a big result for Man United. As far as top 4 spots are concerned, in a negative meaning, of course, and it adds just more pressure on Ralph Rangnick to perform more in the future. Of course, the fixture continues on Wednesday. Manchester City play Brentford, Norwich City play Crystal Palace, Spurs play Southampton at home, Aston Villa play Leeds, and on Thursday it finishes off with Liverpool playing Leicester and Wolverhampton playing against Arsenal. Do some Coppa Italia action, and the quarter-final kicked off on Tuesday in the Giuseppe Meazza with Inter Milan hosting AS Roma. It was the return of Jose Mourinho for that stadium, of course. The league game was played, of course, in the Olimpico. There's still a big game where he's going to be returning again to Giuseppe Meazza in the league down the line. But it was the quarterfinals of the Coppa Italia. Inter Milan hosted Roma. 2-0, they ran victors, of course. This was a good game, I thought, for Inter Milan to bounce back of the derby loss, which was pretty hurtful, not just from a fact that it was a derby, but obviously the fact that Milan now have 1 point behind Inter Milan on the table, and that would open the race and blow the race wide open, as well as Napoli, who have 1 point as well and took advantage of their loss in the derby. But obviously we have to remind people that there's a game in hand for Inter Milan in the league. It was a good game. Edin Dzeko scored very early in the second minute for Inter Milan against his old side, just like he did in the league. And Inter Milan, I think from that point onwards, they managed the game. They didn't really put so much effort into dominating or into showing what they can have. I mean, they rested some players, of course. Çalhanoğlu entered late. Denzel Dumfries, who was in the derby lineup, entered very late in the 85th minute. Obviously, smart decisions, I would say, by Simone Inzaghi, who left all of his changes till late in the game after scoring the second goal by Alexis Sanchez, which was a brilliant goal from Alexis Sanchez. Brilliant finish in the net of Rui Patricio. Roma tried to get something going for them in the second half in particular. They tried, of course, but when you have one shot on target in the whole game, you really can't be you can't beat Inter Milan at home. The best you can hope for is to get a draw and take the game as long as possible, but that didn't happen. Obviously, Inter Milan won, and they're going to be the first side going to the semi-finals of that competition. Of course, 3 games are still to be played over the next 2 days. Of course, Milan play Lazio on Wednesday. Of course, that's a big game as well for Milan. Actually, we could see another derby in the semi-final of the Coppa Italia if Milan defeat Lazio. And in the other half of the bracket of that quarterfinal, Atalanta play Fiorentina on Thursday, and it will be Juventus playing Sassuolo on Thursday as well. Big games incoming in the Coppa Italia, of course, and you can see like basically Milan and Inter are going to be competing for everything, it seems, this season. You know, there's the title, the Serie A title. There's of course the Coppa Italia now, it seems to be, and maybe one of them will win the double. Who knows? If anything, it's a very likely scenario that they will see one of those teams winning the double. But as I mentioned, big win for Inter Milan. A loss for Jose Mourinho that is not exactly going to be very pleasing for his side at Roma, who just about have been picking momentum, I think, in the league. Probably the last result against Genoa, the draw and the match where there was red cards and all, notwithstanding. And Roma, by the way, have some absolutely ridiculous records as far as red cards are concerned. They seem to be frequently involved in a match where there is a red card, either for them or for opponents. Of course, they had 2 players sent off against Milan. They had players sent off against Genoa. They had players sent off against Spezia back in December. Something needs to work properly, I think, as far as Mourinho is concerned, if they want to get indeed into the top 4 spots in the Serie A and try and return to their glorious, I think, early 2000s days for the nearest reference point, just to be fair. So big games coming in the Coppa Italia. Reminder, Milan play Lazio, Atalanta play Fiorentina, and Juventus play Sassuolo. Atalanta, Fiorentina, Juventus, Sassuolo are both on Thursday, of course, and Milan Lazio in the San Siro is on Wednesday. From Europe, we go to something a little bit more international now, and it's the FIFA Club World Cup action continuing in Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates, and we had the first of our quarter-finals of that tournament, with Palmeiras, the Libertadores champions, playing against Al-Ahly, the African champions, and beating them 2-0 to go through to the semi-final to meet obviously, or the final actually of the tournament, to meet Chelsea or Al-Hilal, of course, the winners from the other semi-finals of this tournament. And I was hoping that Al-Ahly would do something, because legitimately they're at the moment probably the best team in Africa at the moment. And speaking of that, of course, hopefully we'll do a Champions League preview in the African Champions League coming, of course, this weekend. Al-Ahly, I thought, were the best side in Africa by far in the last couple of years, and I expected them to do better against Palmeiras, who simply overran them. They played better than them. They had a dominating first half where they scored the first goal and scored early in the second half and just sat on that goal. And Al-Ahly, of course, with the amount of injuries they had, the red card during the game for Ayman Ashraf, and of course the absentees that still just have returned from the final of the African Cup of Nations. In fact, the lineup of Al-Ahly, weirdly, I would say, featured Amr Al-Sulaya, who was just about playing the final of the African Cup of Nations with Egypt against Senegal just about 2 days ago. It is unbelievably, I would say, rough for some players, of course, to come back for that side and just be featured straight away into the starting lineup. It's not going to be a bad finish for Al-Ahly if they finish 3rd or 4th. They did that before, and they can, and it's going to be a pretty honourable finish, I would say, for Al-Ahly. But obviously, the ambition or the expectations and the sort of the predictions and the the way the fans expected Al-Ahly to be better, obviously, for their reputation in Africa, definitely this is going to feel like a big disappointment as far as Al-Ahly is concerned. But obviously they have Champions League football to think about when they return to Egypt, of course, which starts, as I mentioned, this week. And for Palmeiras, they prove again that they are one of the best sides in the world at the moment. 2-time Libertadores, Coppa Libertadores champions back to back now. And now they feature in the final, finally, because they missed on the final. I think in the last 3 participations for them in this tournament, they missed on the final twice. And in this one, they finally get to the final the 3rd time of knocking, which was, happy news for them. Of course, they will face the winner of the second semi-final. Of course, 2 games will take place on Wednesday. It will be the 5th and 6th place match between Monterrey and Al Jazeera, and then, of course, you have the second semi-final, which is going to be between Al-Ahly from Saudi Arabia and Chelsea. A pure blue derby, if you want to say, and of course a game that I'm very interested to watch because I think Al-Ahly are a really good side. Also, 2 times back-to-back Asian champions, which is really important. They face the European champions, one of the best teams in the world. This is going to be very interesting, and hopefully Al-Ahly at least give a good image to the Arab football and present us with a really good image for the Arab football against one of the best sides in the world, if not the best, in Chelsea in that second semi-final. You may have noticed that I breezed through a lot of this episode's content. I sped through some of the sections of this episode because I want to leave the biggest section to the African Cup of Nations recap. Obviously, I wasn't able to do an episode straight away on Monday to recap the whole tournament on YouTube at the very least. I just did a special Spotify edition to talk about the final itself. But this time I'm going to look back at this tournament as an entirety. What is going to be the everlasting image from this African Cup of Nations 2021 that was played in 2022. Definitely, it's going to be an edition, I would say, to forget. At least if you're not Senegal, because realistically speaking, this tournament has been marred by a lot of things, and I'm going to talk about the negatives first because they can't just be ignored. As much as we Africans can be relieved, I would say, that this tournament has been over, I think we can't just escape the things that happen in this tournament, from COVID issues, the false negatives, the false positives, the testing problems, the sort of security issues in Cameroon, the logistical problems, the stadiums not being that good, the hotels not being that good, the complaints from the Gambian side, from the Malawi side, about how they've been treated in the hotels and how they've been washing their own shores and doing their own chores in the hotel. Nobody giving them any good service. The training grounds not being good. The stadiums to play not being good. Playing in a heat that is just unbelievable without any sort of good conditions on the pitch. Obviously, the big incidents in the Olembe Stadium where 8 people died, of course, and 70 more were injured before the game between Cameroon and Comoros. The whole favouritism towards Cameroon itself, speaking of that. There's been just loads of bad things in this tournament that we should forget about, or we should, try to get over, because we can't get over those things. It would be impossible to just, go on, basically, after what happened in this tournament. I think there needs to be a retrospective look on this tournament by CAF, although I doubt that will happen because I think they're trying to speed to the next one in Ivory Coast, which I just hope, fingers crossed, that it will be a better tournament, a much better organised tournament under the Ivorian FA, which apparently, according to rumours, if you believe it or not, surprise, surprise, Didier Drogba is running for its presidency, and that is a scenario that I'm worried that the Cameroonian scenario is going to be repeated. But I genuinely, in some way, I believe that Didier Drogba is a person with more integrity than Samuel Eto'o. At least this experience showed us that. But I hope he's going to be a better president than Samuel Eto'o anyway, if he indeed runs for the presidency of the Ivorian Federation, and he wants to be the man in charge of hosting this tournament. And in general, I think Ivory Coast has better abilities and better capabilities to host this tournament than Cameroon does. As I mentioned, loads of bad things to remember about this tournament, loads of bad things to to sort of look behind at this tournament. But let's talk about the positives, or should I say the footballing aspect of it, because that is, I think, the real the one true side that we can talk about without really getting into any disasters. It has been a disappointment, I would say, for some teams. Some of the big sides in this tournament hasn't exactly clicked. On top of that, of course, the champions, or the reigning champions before that tournament, Algeria, who entered this tournament on the back of winning the Arab Cup in December, being on a 35 undefeated streak, and really going the distance and being applauded and being pipped to win the entire thing, and to face actually Senegal in the tournament in a rematch of their 2019 final. In the end, they left with the worst way possible. No wins in the group stages, losing twice to Equatorial Guinea and Ivory Coast. An embarrassing loss to Ivory Coast the way it happened. Of course, it could have been more. It was 3-1, but it could have been more. The performance in general hasn't been that good. The first game against Lyon for them, they had the excuse of the heat and the stadium and all of that, and it was, I think, a constant excuse throughout the tournament, to some actually weird excuses. They, not the players or the coach, let's be honest, but excuses by some of the public, the Algerian public, the Algerian footballing media. Basically, they try to think that there is some sort of magic voodoo casted over the Algerian team that didn't allow them to do any sort of stuff in the tournament and win and score goals. It was weird excuses, but again, not exactly something I will take seriously. It's just, I think, for the banter, this. But seriously, it's a big disappointment for Algeria. Obviously, they have a big game against Cameroon in the qualifiers for the World Cup coming as well. Another disappointing side, although the disappointment came later on in the tournament, was Nigeria, who started the group stages terrifically. They breezed through their group stages games, 3 wins in 3 games, scoring, getting going, playing front foot, playing smooth football, playing the best football in the tournament. They managed to beat Egypt quite convincingly. Yes, it was 1-0, but it was a convincing fashion. They could have scored more. Egypt were not there in that game. We're all going to speak about them, of course, later. But then in the round of 16, they sort of underestimated Tunisia a little bit. Of course, they underestimated them. They sort of entered the game thinking that the same game plan would work on everyone. It didn't. Tunisia snuck away with the win and got to the quarterfinals, which leads us, of course, to Tunisia, and that's where my bias would come at. I thought we had, obviously, we played 5 games in the tournament. We lost 3 of them. So that's subjectively, objectively, however you look at it, it is a bad tournament in general. Scoring in 2 games out of those 3 is already bad. But when you concede 3 and you score 5, that is not exactly the best of stats to have for one of these sides that are in the top 5 rankings of the CAF and of the FIFA, of course, for that continent, and a side that is not one of the favourites, but I think one of always the present forces in the tournament. Well, of course, I can find the excuses for Tunisia more than any side, because we've been the side probably alongside Comoros, I think, that was hit with COVID the most. We at a certain point were missing 10 to 12 players. We missed the coach, we missed the staff by COVID infections and all of that, and it was genuinely a bad time for Tunisia overall, on and off the pitch. We didn't click, we didn't show. I will always take that Nigeria performance to heart, but I think you cannot live off that, and you cannot just stay in that place and not move forward. We need to move forward, but we have, I think, a good side we can improve on with better coaching, and I think certainly with some better understanding and some better harmony between the players. Speaking of, I think, of sides that have been unimpressive, or I would say, not exactly up to their standards, Ghana, of course, pops up in that discussion. I had them second behind Morocco. In the end, they were the bottom of their table, losing to Comoros in a historic fashion, of course, 3-2. It has been obviously the worst African Cup nations I saw Ghana play in. That is undoubtedly true, obviously. They've been in the quarters in 2017. They were knocked out of the quarterfinals in 2017. They were knocked out of the second round in 2019, and the knockout round and the group stages in 2022. So that is a gradual sort of regression for Ghana into obscurity, I would say, because at the moment the generation of Ghana is, I think, they still have in relics of the past in the Ayew brothers. I think once they get rid of them, they should have the chance to build a new generation, I think, led by some of the players that they have abroad. The likes of Yusuf Musa, the likes of Afela Jean, obviously in Roma. That Ghanaian kid could be a great star for a new generation for the Black Stars. Now, turning on to the side that they were impressive in this tournament, obviously, let's start with the champions, Senegal. And, this is kind of, a knockout thing for them, because in the group stages they haven't been that good. They haven't impressed, scoring only 1 goal in 3 games, 5 points, not showing a lot of creativity, and people thought, well, you know what, that is not going to be their year. But in the knockout stages, yes, their path was easy. Let's just put it this way: they faced, facing Cape Verde, facing, Burkina Faso, facing Equatorial Guinea in the quarterfinal isn't exactly the hardest of opponents to get to the final, but still, they needed to kick off the second gear anyway, and the games were not easy, even against Cape Verde with 10 man and 9 man, and against Equatorial Guinea, who really are solid in the back. And they managed to put Senegal under pressure, really, and also Burkina Faso, who were a very decent side, played a very decent tournament, and finished 4th against Cameroon. They kicked off. Speaking, of course, of Burkina Faso as well, as I mentioned, they were a really, really good side. I'm going to omit Cameroon because I didn't think they were impressive at all, and for a home side, I think they should have played better, they should have done better, and obviously with the situation that they caused against Comoros, I genuinely do not have anything to say about them at all. Back to the impressive stuff, Burkina Faso, as I mentioned, had a great tournament, and then of course the runners-up, Egypt themselves, who, not exactly a great tournament attacking-wise, but defensively, I think they were one of the most resilient sides in this tournament. They explored a lot of defensive options, new defensive options in Mohamed Abdelmonem, particularly, of course, with their centre-backs being injured, their right-back being injured, the left-back was injured and then returned in the tournament. The injury, crisis, affected the goalkeepers. Al-Shanawi was injured. Abu Ghabel, the hero, I think, of Egypt throughout the tournament, particularly in the knockout stages. Everybody thought, you know what, that guy, who was the goalkeeper, in 4 grueling games as far as Egypt were concerned, playing 4 extra times and 3 penalty shootouts in this tournament. He definitely was the hero, of course, best player, I think, in the Egyptian squad, without a doubt. Egypt, they got through it all. They got through the early stuttering of the group stages. Everybody thought they won't achieve a lot of things, but they got to the final, which is impressive, although their style of football is not exactly that great, and they didn't show anything offensively that would make you think, oh yeah, they're favourites to win this tournament, but they grounded out and they defended well throughout the tournament, and they got to a final where unfortunately they were unlucky. Big shout out to Comoros as well. Their story was incredible. Also, what happened against Cameroon was pretty horrific, and it's pretty heartbreaking, I would say, in the moment. So we really feel sorry for them, but hopefully for them we get they get back to the African Cup of Nations soon. Hopefully this won't be their last. Hopefully they will be there again. Gambia as well, debutants in this tournament in a long time. They impressed. They were really, really solid. They looked really amazing throughout getting to the quarterfinal and really putting a tough performance against Cameroon, even 45 to 60 minutes in that game. Best player in this tournament, I think this is going to be between, I would say, Gabarski, the goalkeeper for Egypt, and Vincent Aboubakar, obviously top scorer of the tournament, 8 behind the second greatest goal scorer in a single tournament with 8, because the first, I don't exactly remember its name, but it was in 72 72, I think it was 74 edition, and he was a Congoli player who scored 9 goals. Gabaski, I think, maybe deserves it more because he got his start in the final and he was clutch player when it mattered. Maybe Sadio Mane as well, because he carried Senegal to the final. He was the most creative man in the tournament, of course, creating 4 goals, or 5 goals, I think, as far as assists is concerned, also scoring 3 himself. So that's, I think, big as far as Senegal are concerned. It's definitely a tournament that everybody should put behind now, and we look forward, of course, to 2 things: the World Cup qualifiers coming in March, of course, big games coming: Algeria versus Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, Tunisia versus Mali, Congo versus Morocco, and Senegal is going to be playing Egypt in a rerun of that final twice, of course. It's going to be a good trilogy of matches. The first was gone, and the 2 others are coming in March, of course. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening on Spotify, Google Podcasts. I was your host, HDVBSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and all the other content on the channel, and of course follow us on social media. The usernames on the screen and the links in the description. Until next time, I was your host, HDVBSP, and until tomorrow's episode, goodbye. It's going to be a good treat for the weekend. 3 episodes back to back. Wednesday, Thursday, and it's going to be Friday as well. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.